9 million square miles, no telephones, no telegraph, no printing press, and a message could still cross the entire Mongol Empire in roughly the same time it takes you to drive across a single American state. Think about what that stretch of land actually meant. From the Pacific coast of China to the gates of Vienna, one empire, one law, one ruler's word. No highway system, no radio, not even reliable maps for most of it. And yet, an order issued in Karakorum could reach a general 2,000 miles away before the situation on the ground had even finished changing. How does a command outrun the world it's trying to control? Here's the machine nobody built on purpose that kept an empire the size of Asia from flying apart. This isn't really a story about the Mongols. It's a story about a problem every large civilization since has had to solve, and most got wrong. How do you govern something too big to see? Rome solved it with roads and legions stationed along them. The Mongols solved it with something stranger, a filing system, a relay network of stations, riders, and small metal tablets that turned an ocean of grassland into something closer to a single room. Start with the stations. The Mongols called the network the Yam. Roughly every 20 to 40 miles along every major route the empire controlled sat a station, a large building, corrals, fresh horses already saddled. A rider would arrive half frozen or half cooked, depending on the season, hand off whatever he carried, and a new rider would already be mounting the next horse before the first one had caught his breath. The historian Jack Weatherford has described it as the nervous system of the empire, and that phrase isn't decoration. It's mechanically accurate. Information moved the way a signal moves through a body, station to station, without ever slowing down to rest. Marco Polo rode parts of this network himself, decades after it was built, and he still couldn't quite believe what he was describing. He wrote of more than 10,000 of these stations and more than 300,000 horses kept in reserve just for this purpose. A journey that should have taken 100 days could be compressed into 10. Read that number again. 10,000 buildings, maintained, stocked, and staffed, purely so that a piece of information could keep moving. No empire before this had ever spent that kind of infrastructure on something you couldn't touch. But speed alone doesn't hold an empire together. Speed without control is just chaos moving faster. So the Mongols built a second layer underneath the first, and this is the part almost nobody remembers, even though it mattered more than the horses. Every rider who used the yam carried a tablet. The Mongols called it a gerege. Persian and Chinese sources call it a paisa. It was small enough to hang from a belt or a neck, made of wood, silver, or gold, depending on the rank of the mission, and it functioned as something between a passport and a warrant. Show the gerege at a station, and you were owed fresh horses, food, and shelter. No questions asked, no negotiation, no bribe required. Without it, you were just a stranger on a horse in the middle of nowhere. Think about what that tablet was actually doing. It wasn't just proving who you were. It was proving that the order in your saddlebag was real, that it came from someone with the authority to give it, and that every station between here and the capital was legally required to treat it as law. A piece of metal the size of your palm carried the full weight of an empire that stretched across 2 continents. That is what a filing system does. It doesn't move information, it makes information trustworthy enough to act on. And the people who ran this weren't generals. They were clerks, station masters, scribes, registrars who logged every rider, every horse, every message that passed through their post, because a station that couldn't account for its own horses was a station that would be shut down or worse. This record-keeping obsession came directly from Chinese administrative practice, absorbed and scaled up by Mongol rule until it covered a landmass no bureaucracy had ever attempted to track before. These were not the men history remembers. No statues, no campaigns named after them. But without their ledgers, without their tally of who came through with what tablet on what day, the entire network would have been indistinguishable from banditry. Here's where it gets fragile. The same system that let orders travel 2,000 miles in days also meant that a single forged tablet, a single corrupted station, could move false authority just as fast as real authority. The Mongol scholar Timothy May has pointed out that as the empire fractured into competing khanates, Control over the yam became one of the sharpest tools of political warfare. Whoever controlled the stations controlled which orders counted as real. What happens when the filing system itself becomes a weapon? By the late 13th century, that question stopped being hypothetical. As the unified empire splintered into rival khanates, the yam splintered with it. Sections of the network fell under different rulers who no longer trusted each other's tablets. A gerege issued in one khanate might be worthless, or worse, treated as an act of aggression in another. The very infrastructure that had made rapid, centralized rule possible became a set of borders, choke points, places where information now stopped instead of flowed. The empire hadn't just lost territory, it had lost its own nervous system, piece by piece, station by station. And that's the part worth sitting with. The Mongols didn't conquer the largest contiguous land empire in history with swords alone. They conquered it with a filing system, a network built to make distance functionally disappear. Its strength and its weakness were the exact same feature: total trust in a small piece of metal carried by a stranger, verified by a clerk you never met. When that trust held, an empire the size of Asia could be run like a single household. When it broke, the empire broke with it. You don't ride into a station and show a tablet anymore, but every time you tap a card, sign into an account, or trust that a stranger's badge means what it claims to mean, you're relying on the same idea the Mongols built 800 years ago: a quiet system of verification running in the background of your life that you've never had to think about until the day it stops.